What's up, horror lovers and true crime enthusiasts? Today we are going to be talking about the granddaddy of all whodunits, Jack the Ripper, and his identity possibly being verified. So let's get right into that. So it was a historian named Russell Edwards who claims that he has 100% identified Jack the Ripper as Aaron Kosminski. So first off, let's just go with number one is this is not really anything new. If you follow Jack the Ripper's case, if you're interested in horror or true crime or anything like that, as I am, and I'm sure Jack the Ripper is one of the subjects that most people like us follow throughout the years, right? We love to look into the Jack the Ripper murders. It's mysterious, it's intriguing. But if you do follow it, then you have most certainly heard of the name Aaron Kosminski. Kosminski is not a new suspect. It's not something new. He actually was a prime suspect from the very beginning, basically. So we're going to get into that. But first, let's talk about the DNA evidence, which historian Russell Edwards claims he has. This also is not anything new. This is not something that just came up. I know it's getting a lot of attention now in 2025, but this evidence actually, I remember hearing about this years ago. I believe it was about 10 or 11 years ago. I remember hearing about the DNA evidence and linking to Kosminski. And there's been a lot of back and forth about it. And according to Russell Edwards, it's almost, when he first came up, found this evidence through DNA, he tried to bring it out. He tried to bring it out to police. He tried to, make it very well known, but they kind of put a monkey wrench in it. And it's almost, according to him, it's almost as if they were trying their best not to have this found. We're trying to pretend that this wasn't happening, it didn't exist or anything like that. So that's very interesting. That just adds to the mystery of Jack the Ripper himself. Why police would, in such a notorious and such a notable case like Jack the Ripper, why you wouldn't want to take a look at these things and see if it actually holds any weight, that this DNA evidence, exists and verifies the identity of Jack the Ripper. But nevertheless, like I said, according to him, it's almost as if they didn't want any of this found and weren't even interested, in looking at it. And he himself in an interview said that, if you listen to what they said, he could tell that they didn't even, people who criticized his work and his findings didn't even really read anything that he wrote, or they would have, understood better why he says that Aaron Kosminski was Jack the Ripper. So that's on the DNA evidence of Aaron Kosminski, which Russell Edwards got through descendants of Aaron Kosminski. And the DNA evidence was in the form of blood and semen, apparently, on a shawl that belonged to Catherine Eddowes. Now, the thing about Catherine Eddowes, if memory serves me correct, it was Catherine Eddowes that Kosminski actually was seen at the scene of the crime. He was actually seen there. And this is, I believe, comes also after he was already a suspect. Or maybe this is when he first became a suspect. Nevertheless, Kosminski was at the scene of the crime. And he was, known to be there. But there was a witness who they saw Kosminski but didn't want to name him. He didn't want to name Kosminski. And according to certain police inspectors, and he didn't want to name him because something about being the same ethnicity or something like that, which I don't know. This was 130 something years ago. Who knows why he didn't want to name him? But nevertheless, he didn't want to name him, but Kosminski was placed at the scene of the murder. So, and that is another thing, is there were police senior officers and police inspectors who they themselves also said that Kosminski was 100% the murderer. They couldn't prove it, but with all the evidence and with everything that they had towards Kosminski, they said that there was no doubt in their mind that he was Jack the Ripper. So a little bit about Kosminski. Researchers of the Jack the Ripper case and who have looked into his murder, and forensic experts and and things like that, they have all noted that Jack the Ripper was probably somebody with mental defects, and was probably someone who had a hatred for women. This is right up Kosminski's alley, like 100%, literally. Kosminski was known to be a schizophrenic, and he was also known to have a hatred of women, especially prostitutes. So again, this just fits the profile of Kosminski to the T. And putting Kosminski at the scene, I mean, and then you have 130-something years later, 137 years later, you have the DNA evidence that says it was Kosminski. It kind of shows that, in my opinion, Kosminski was the guilty party, was Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper, we always get these fanciful notions of, the mysterious killer in a top hat and the Victorian cloak and everything, and a lot of people have always thought that maybe he was royalty and that's how he got away with it. But in reality, it was really because we're talking about Whitechapel, which back then was a very destitute kind of place. It wasn't the kind of place that police were gonna, put priority to if anything happened. So it was kind of easy for people to commit all kinds of crimes, which the area was known for, and pretty much get away with it. And especially if there are witnesses who are not going to cooperate and not give names, then it makes that job just that much harder. But so there is a lot of pushback to Edwards' findings. There's a lot of pushback to the DNA evidence being Jack Kosminski's. And I believe that a lot of this is because people don't want to give up the mystery that is Jack the Ripper. People don't want to give up that intrigue, that unknown aspect of this mysterious killer, and we all love that mysterious aspect. That's kind of what attracts people to the case, is that the unknown factor of it. So when you have somebody listed as a suspect, it takes that away for a lot of people. And I think that's what really gets a lot of people to say, well, no, they don't want to think of Kosminski as Jack the Ripper. They kind of want to be left in the dark about it at this point. And that's something I've always said about horror movies. Is I love horror movies that have the suspense and the mystery and the element of the unknown. That you need that in horror movies. That when things are explained too much, when villains are explained too much with a backstory or something, that it just kind of takes away from it. And this is case in point. However, this isn't a movie. This is real life. This was a real murderer who murdered at least 5, the canonical 5 women. And I think it's good to bring some closure to the descendants of those women and just to historical accuracy itself. It's good to bring some closure to this. And, if it turns out, in fact, that Russell Edwards is correct, and right now the only thing stopping it from being legally said that it's Kosminski is an inquest into Catherine Eddowes' death, which, again, I believe she was the one that Kosminski was spotted at the scene. And remember, when Catherine Eddowes was murdered, Liz Stride was murdered that same night. Someone saw Liz Stride, her body was, her neck was cut, Liz Stride, and her killer left the scene because someone, I believe who was the witness, saw someone coming. The killer heard someone coming, so he left, and he didn't get to finish his work on Liz Stride. And a little while later, and a little further away from the scene, he found Catherine Eddowes and murdered her. So this is where Aaron Kosminski was, pinned at the scene of the crime, and Russell Edwards talks about this. But again, I think it's good if we have some closure to the Jack the Ripper case. Kosminski, by the way, a lot of people think he was a barber. This actually turned out not to be true. His brother is the one who said that Kosminski was a barber or a hairstylist, and this was done really just to give Kosminski an image that kind of like he was doing something, and not just being a dreg of society of sorts. It just was said to kind of boost his image, basically, that he was doing something. And they said, yeah, he's a hairdresser or a barber. But again, this actually wasn't the case. He actually didn't he wasn't a barber or anything like that by trade. And some people have said that Jack the Ripper must have had medical knowledge, and that's how he mutilated the woman the way he did. This actually is not true. I don't believe this for a second. I never did. If you look at the pictures of how these women were mutilated, it does not take someone with medical knowledge to do that. As a matter of fact, I believe it would be the opposite. I believe somebody with medical knowledge would have been a lot neater in their mutilation. I believe someone who was just vicious and just wanted to satiate their bloodlust would do it in the way Jack the Ripper did. And that's why a lot of people, a lot of forensics experts and who looked at this noted that it seemed like someone with a hatred for a woman. It seemed very passionate, not as if it was something that you needed medical knowledge for, or butchering knowledge or anything like that. You really could do it, and they were mutilated badly, and you don't need to have any kind of knowledge to do that. That's been done so many times. But and another thing that does point to Kosminski is that Kosminski was put into an insane asylum because he was a schizophrenic, remember, and he was put into an insane asylum around 1891. And this is around the exact time that the murders stopped. From 1888 to 1891, this is when you have the canonical 5 murders of Jack the Ripper, and it does coincide with Kosminski going into an asylum, and then the murders coming to an abrupt stop, basically. So I think with all this evidence, it really does point to Kosminski. I mean, they still are trying to verify it, even though the historian Russell Edwards says that it's 100% Kosminski, and even though police of the day of the investigations said that they believe it was 100% Kosminski, there's just so much evidence against him that I believe, in my opinion, that it is. But time will tell. When this inquest is done, we'll get a clearer picture on it and more information. Until then, stay slashing. Do like and subscribe and leave comments and let me know what you think. Stay slashing, people.